Have you ever wondered how a medieval traveler knew which stream could save a life, and which one could quietly end it? Deep inside the forests of medieval Europe, thirst was often more dangerous than hunger, especially during long woodland journeys alone. A traveler could survive several days without food, but without water, every mile became slower and more dangerous. Every decision became less reliable, every mistake became more likely. Yet finding water was only the beginning of survival. The greater challenge was knowing whether that water was truly safe enough to drink beneath the ancient forest canopy. To modern eyes, a clear woodland stream often appears clean, but medieval travelers understood crystal clear water could flow through marshes filled with decaying vegetation, silently carrying dangers invisible to human observation alone. Quiet pools could shelter contamination left by animals upstream, despite reflecting the surrounding forest with remarkable clarity and beauty. A beautiful spring surrounded by lush greenery might attract countless wild creatures, making it one of the busiest places nearby. For experienced travelers, water was never judged by sight alone, because every reliable answer existed somewhere within the surrounding landscape. Long before reaching the edge of a stream, careful observers had already begun reading the forest with disciplined attention. The shape of the hills, the direction of valleys, and the kinds of trees growing nearby all became valuable clues. The movement of birds, tracks crossing damp soil, moisture carried by the wind, and distant flowing water all mattered. Finding safe water was never luck, but one of the oldest survival skills developed beneath Europe's ancient forests through experience. Every journey began with understanding one simple truth. Water always followed the land wherever the forest quietly allowed it. Rain falling across wooded hills slowly gathered beneath layers of soil before emerging as springs or flowing into narrow streams. Travelers who understood the shape of the terrain rarely wandered blindly searching for water hidden beneath the ancient woodland canopy. Instead, they carefully studied the slopes beneath their feet, recognizing how valleys naturally collected moisture while ridges remained drier. Gentle depressions often guided seasonal runoff, while small ravines quietly hinted at hidden streams flowing somewhere below the forest floor. The forest itself quietly revealed where water preferred to travel, but reaching it safely always required patience and careful observation. Experienced travelers rarely rushed toward the first sound of flowing water, even when thirst made every passing moment increasingly difficult. Instead, they deliberately slowed their pace, allowing the surrounding woodland to reveal important information before taking another careful step forward. As they approached a stream, they began studying everything surrounding it before anyone attempted to reach the water's edge directly. Dense animal tracks leading toward the bank immediately attracted attention because they revealed how frequently the water had been visited. Fresh hoofprints crossing muddy ground suggested regular movement by deer or wild boar seeking dependable woodland water every single day. Smaller tracks revealed foxes, badgers, hares, and countless woodland creatures quietly visiting the same source throughout different hours of daylight. Water naturally attracted life, but where many animals gathered, the surrounding ground often became heavily disturbed by constant movement alone. A crowded watering place was not always the safest location for a human traveler searching for reliable drinking water within the forest. Observation continued long before anyone touched the water, because the flow itself became the next important lesson waiting to be understood. Moving water almost always inspired greater confidence than still water, although experienced travelers knew careful judgment remained absolutely necessary. Streams carried fresh water continuously through the landscape, while stagnant pools allowed leaves, mud, insects, and decaying organic matter to accumulate. Medieval travelers rarely possessed scientific explanations for disease, yet generations of experience taught
flowing water generally proved more reliable than silent ponds hidden beneath dense trees, where organic material slowly collected over time.
Even among streams, however, experienced travelers understood that careful choices still mattered before deciding where they would finally drink. A narrow spring emerging directly from rocky ground often inspired greater confidence than broad channels flowing through marshy woodland terrain.
The farther water traveled across the forest floor, the more opportunities it had to gather leaves, soil, and organic material along its course.
Choosing where to collect water demanded patience, because one careful decision could determine whether the journey safely continued or ended unexpectedly. Only after every observation agreed did the traveler finally allow the clear spring to fill his waiting leather flask with calm confidence. Finding clean water solved only half the challenge, because preserving every precious drop became equally important before the journey continued. Experienced travelers never assumed another spring would appear soon, so every measured drink became part of a carefully planned journey. Wise travelers never waited until overwhelming thirst appeared, because poor decisions often followed the earliest signs of dehydration long before exhaustion.
The safest moment to drink was rarely the first moment of thirst, but the moment experience judged both necessary and appropriate.
Experienced travelers adjusted every drink according to weather, terrain, and distance, because no two woodland journeys demanded exactly the same amount of water. The easiest way to preserve water was often reducing unnecessary effort, because every wasted movement demanded another precious drink later. During the warmest hours, experienced travelers often sought deep shade instead of forcing themselves onward beneath unnecessary heat and exhaustion. Experienced travelers often chose cooler woodland routes because avoiding excessive heat preserved both strength and valuable drinking water throughout long journeys. Experienced travelers understood that steady progress covered greater distances than hurried bursts of effort followed by exhaustion and unnecessary water loss. Wise travelers searched for tomorrow's water long before today's supply became dangerously low, ensuring survival never depended upon desperation. Long before water could be heard, experienced travelers often recognized its presence through subtle changes spreading quietly across the surrounding forest. The forest air itself often changed before water appeared, rewarding travelers who trusted every sense instead of relying upon sight alone. Eventually, the forest rewarded careful observation as the first faint sound of flowing water quietly emerged from somewhere beyond the trees ahead. Even after hearing flowing water, experienced travelers refused to trust it immediately, because every new source deserved the same careful examination.
Patience protected medieval travelers far more often than speed, because the forest consistently rewards.
Only after every clue supported the same conclusion did experienced travelers finally approach unfamiliar water. With generations of woodland travelers survived not through luck, but by repeating the same careful habits until observation became instinct rather than conscious effort. These survival skills endured for centuries because experienced travelers passed practical observation from one generation directly to the next through shared journeys. The greatest survival tool carried through medieval forests was neither a weapon nor a flask, but the patience to understand nature before acting. For medieval travelers, the forest was never an enemy to defeat, but a living landscape whose sign. Every successful journey through the medieval forest strengthened experience, making the next crossing safer than the one before through accumulated observation. Safe water was never discovered by chance. It was earned through observation, patience, discipline, and a lifelong respect for the forest itself. To medieval people, water represented far more than survival. It represented knowledge, memory, and across medieval Europe, the difference between returning home and disappearing forever often depended upon understanding nature before attempting to challenge it. As daylight slowly disappeared beneath the ancient canopy, one truth remained unchanged. Finding safe water solved only one challenge. As darkness approached, another equally water could keep a traveler alive through the day. But without fire, the coming night introduced an entirely different struggle against the medieval forest. As daylight faded, experienced travelers immediately began searching for dry fuel because fire required prep. Experienced travelers quickly learned that not all dead wood burned equally, because moisture often remained hidden long after branches had fallen. Before darkness completely settled across the forest, experienced travelers quietly prepared tomorrow's survival by gathering dry fuel while enough light still remained. Before darkness claimed the forest completely, every careful decision made throughout the day quietly combined into one. Night arrived without warning beneath Europe's ancient forests. Water had secured survival through the day. Fire would now determine survival until dawn. Tomorrow's survival would begin with the dry branches gathered before sunset, proving that preparation always started long before danger truly arrived.
Every drop of safe water began with careful observation. Every warm fire would begin with the same.
Safe water was never merely a destination. It was the result of reading hundreds of quiet signs that the medieval forest revealed only to those patient enough to notice them.
By nightfall, water alone could no longer protect a traveler. Warmth, light, and carefully prepared fire.
The forest had already provided water. Now, beneath complete darkness, it offered one